Hello, my name is Dylan Rapoli. Today we are going to be talking about the current state of the United States economy by looking at the current unemployment rate, GDP, inflation rate, and the current account. First, let's take a moment to understand what is employment rate. The unemployment rate is the percentage of people in the labor force who are unemployed but actively looking for work. It is calculated by dividing the number of unemployed individuals by the total number of people in the labor force. The labor force includes people who are employed and those who are actively seeking employment. This calculation gives us our unemployment rate. Individuals who are not included in the unemployment rate are those who are not seeking work. These are people who are retired or possibly stay at home moms who do not desire to be working. Let's take a look at the current unemployment rate for the U.S. economy. The data we will be looking at does not factor in the month of December, as this data will be released sometime in mid January. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the current unemployment rate is 4.2%. There has not been much change over the past few months, with the unemployment rate in October being 4.1%. This number is not historically low or high. The most recent historically high unemployment rate we've seen since 2004 was in 2020. The unemployment rate being valued at 14.8% of April in 2020 was caused by the COVID pandemic during that time. Some circumstances that have influenced the current unemployment rate are most likely due to the seasonal fluctuations that occur annually. For example, college students who graduated in June have entered the labor force, and many are still in the job hunt. My older brother graduated from Brown this past spring, and he is still in the job search, so he is included in this circumstance. Another seasonal fluctuation that must be taken into account is the weather during the last months of the year. As the weather gets colder, seasonal industries like agriculture and construction begin to slow down. Next, let's take a moment to understand what is GDP. GDP measures the size and health of an economy by adding up the value of goods and services produced. It reflects the economic activity within a country. Today, we're going to look at the real GDP of the United States. Real GDP is adjusted for inflation. This provides a more accurate picture of an economy's growth. Let's take a look at the United States GDP, or its current rate of economic growth. The U.S. Bureau of Economics Analysis shows that our country's GDP increased at an annual 3.1% in the third quarter of this year, according to their third estimate. Although it is hard to determine whether our country is currently in an expansion or a recession, since the GDP has increased from 2.8% to 3.1% from the Bureau's second and third estimates, it reflects the increase in exports and consumer spending. This allows us to characterize the current economy as being in a state of expansion. Next, we will understand what is inflation. Inflation is the rise of the general price of goods and services in an economy. Today, we are going to be looking at the United States CPI. This is one of the methods used to measure inflation. An easy way to think about inflation is that as inflation rises, each dollar you have buys less than what it did before. Next, we will understand the U.S. inflation rate and what it means for our economy. The current inflation rate is 2.7%. This inflation rate is relatively good. The ideal inflation rate, according to the Federal Reserve, is around 2%. The Federal Reserve should not make any efforts to change the current inflation rate. However, they may take action if there were to be an increase in this rate significantly. Next, let's understand what is the U.S. current account. The current account is an important component of a country's balance of payments. This tracks all economic transactions between residents of a country and the rest of the world over a specific period in time. Usually, these are measured quarterly. Lastly, we will look at the current account of the U.S. right now. The US is currently in a deficit of $266.8 billion. This deficit widened by $28.5 billion in the second quarter of 2024. This number is neither good or bad. It is important to note that many of the economic forces driving capital flows are very long term. Many of these developments unfold over decades, not quarters. While it is a goal for the deficit to be shortened in the future, there is no inherent reason that such change would result in a financial crisis. And with that, we conclude our conversation today regarding the current United States economy. We talked about the current unemployment rate, GDP, inflation rate, and current account of the United States. Thank you for listening.